Before we begin, thank you very much to Jonathan C. for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you very much for supporting the channel and keeping us going. You are owed a video request. If you want to go ahead and DM that to me over on Patreon, that would be appreciated. For everyone, that's like the easiest way for me to keep track of it because I can just see it in my inbox. But thank you very much for helping out. I do appreciate it. Lets me continue doing things like this. It is tier list time once again, and we are going to be talking the troop builders throughout Transformers. Yeah, let me get this. This is all got rearranged. Let me see, make sure this is all in frame. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's get this started off. I have not included literally every single iteration of the troop builder transformer. Not every single variation of the Sharkticons is included because it's essentially the same concept regardless of what series it's from. That said, there's a few exceptions. Obviously, Vehicons and Prime are different from Vehicons in Beast Machines. So we're going to account for that. We're going to be talking about variations like that. There are minor ones here and there I have not included. You know, there's a lot of them in the video games or comic books, etc. Because we would be here all day, and I don't want to do that to anybody. I am going to account for a lot of different things when I place these in the tier list. Obviously, it's completely subjective, and I'm just making this up as I go. But for the sake of this, I am accounting for a lot of things. The overall design, the concept, you know, how well it's stuck to the fans and the franchise as a whole. But more importantly, it has to have a toy. This tier list is all about the troop builder, the army builder. So in that, we have to make sure you could actually buy it and army build it. Makes sense, right? So there's a lot of fiction-only ones that we're not going to be including here. So, all of that said, welcome to another TJOmega tier list. We're going to begin with the Aerodrone from Beast Machines, and this is already a really good one. It's the only one from Beast Machines that's the same size as the other larger toy that's supposed to be his general. Though you also have the Ultra class if you want that to be a thing as well. But you can have a Jetstorm and then a bunch of Aerodrones behind him. The toy is good. The overall look is good. Mass retail, very much available. And it is one of the better Vehicon designs. I'm going to put him to premium. I think it's a little bit lacking. Just a little bit. But this is a very, very strong start to the list. The Alicon is brand new. You know, in the grand scheme of the Transformers universe. It's existed since G1. But it was only a few years ago that we actually got our first toy of it. We've gotten a few since then. Availability's fine. You could get normal releases of it, so that works out. And there's multiple iterations with new heads, slightly alterations of color. Character-wise, the Alicon isn't seen nearly as often as the Sharkticon, meaning it's not as well connected. And let's be honest, the toy ain't that great. The toy ain't that great. I'm going to give it a little bit more of a nod because there are variations out there, so you can have a little bit of visual difference in some of your troops, which I tend to like for troop building. I'm gonna put it retail release, but don't be surprised if it ends up on like the low end of that. Okay, so some of these toys are technically representing the generals or other specific characters, but bought in multiples, they can represent the thing they're supposed to troop build. That goes for all of the Vehicons, obviously. So Strika's toy, not the best representation of the drones, but then again, she's also not the best representation of herself. It's a weird toy. I mean, if you are really a big fan of the look of all of the artillery drones together on the battlefield, the toy itself doesn't really live up to that, which is unfortunate. This comes from just the thing with Beast Machines, in that the toys are just never really accurate to the show the way you want them to be. So, doesn't really work as Strika, doesn't really work as the troops either, which is unfortunate. I got a bargain bin Strika, because I have to bargain bin that toy based on, you know, the artillery drone, which, let's be honest, the Season 2 drones, They didn't stick with us the way the season ones did they? Not in the least. The visuals aren't nearly as strong. We didn't see them as often. Despite its origins, the Autotrooper has actually maintained a pretty strong space amongst Transformer fans, largely because I think, one, it's just kind of a neat idea, but also, the Autobots almost never have troop builders. It's almost entirely a Decepticon concept, because the Decepticons would be the type to mass-produce soldiers and send them out on the battlefield. But the Autotrooper represents security detail for the Autobots, not necessarily, at least of their modern depictions. We're not getting into the EDC stuff, this time with the original depiction. They've had much better depictions since then. But the Autotrooper is a pretty solid one. I will give it a, let's see, because Autotrooper is also one of those that in story has had personality from time to time. I'm going to put it to premium for now. It might end up on the low end of that, but yeah, I think just it's too popular. It's too good. It works too well. Battle Ravage is a weird one. So we're getting into the Terracons, and technically the Terracons just exist as one big troop builder, but we're going to, because I apparently want this video to take an hour, we're going to talk about the Terracons individually. And Battle Ravage being the first one makes kind of a lot of sense, because it does homage Ravage himself, who, in another universe seems like the type that would be like a troop builder. Little homages like the Megatron cannon on him makes for a nice little toy, easily affordable, seen in mass numbers in the show. It's not bad. I think they're better troop builders. There's better troop builders in that show, but I do think he puts in a pretty solid appearance himself. The Centurion drone is a weird one because it's readily available. You're gonna have, for a while it was very easy to find in Hasbro Pulse, even though it was exclusive to Hasbro Pulse. It was there for a while. You will have a whole bunch of accessory parts if you try to troop build this. That's going to hurt its standing a little bit. The fact that it is a weaponizer in solid gray does give it a lot more appeal, because if you have a horde of them, you can just break them down into weapons for an entire army. That's actually kind of cool. Obviously there's no real character to this one, but conceptually I think it works really, really well. I'm gonna put it somewhere in the middle of retail release. If it had more like fan connection, if it was used better in fiction, or if there's like a little bit of personality to it. Toy-wise, I think it's great. If it was a little bit more available, I'd probably put it up to premium. So this is what we're talking about. So let's get into Insecticons to start with, and this is going to be... Well, no, hang on. The color threw me off. We're not talking about them yet. No, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about the copter drones for Obsidian, and this falls into the same category as Strika, where, unfortunately, just does not represent very well. If you are using this as copter drones and not Obsidian, the green coloring and size already means it just does not work for Obsidian at all. I would argue this toy works better as the drone, and then even still does not work for the drone. Yeah, Beast Machine is just unfortunate. I do like it better than the Strika figure, though. I think it works better than the Strika. Okay. More Terracons. This is Cruel Lock. Cruel Lock is a weird one. It didn't show up nearly as much as Ravage or Dive Bomb in Energon. It's supposed to be like a more savage kind of Terracon. More threatening. This is also a point where we point out the variations on some of these we will also not be discussing today. For instance, I'm not going to get into Doomlock. I'm not going to get into, Dive Bomb's Shadow type or whatever. We are just going to stick to just like they're all one and the same. There's just a few recolorings in there. I don't want to get into all that. Cruel Lock, not a bad, weird toy. Weird toy. Not a terribly bad toy. Energon weapons were good. Availability's fine because it was a basic class figure. Very affordable to find. And anything else? I'm thinking anything else here. I mean, it could have been used in the show more. I do think it's somewhere up. I think it's somewhere there around Ravage. I'm gonna put it down one notch because the versatility of Centurion um, makes me want to keep him a little bit higher. If the toy worked a little better, it's like a weird automorph toy. Like the toy is always a little bit off to me. Now, Cycle Drone. So, okay, it's a notch smaller than the Deluxe, so it works for a drone unit. Yes. The toy is more show accurate than the Deluxe class toy that's supposed to be their leader. Okay, check that box. Basic class toy, $5 a piece, very affordable to get, decently sized, good for hordes. I'm inclined to put him pretty high. I'm still waiting for someone to crack the Holy Grail tier, and you and I know which ones will do that. We have yet to get to them. But I do think the Cycle Drone is a very solid entry. I do think it's a very, very solid entry. Also, like, it might be one of those where, like, the sizing of it is, like, just perfect for, like, troop building, you know? Like, that, I think that's what makes me like that one so much. All right, Dive Bomb. Here we go. So, awesome look, awesome little toy, small size, very affordable. It was an early wave figure. It was all over the place. Used frequently in the cartoon. And I feel like this is one of the things from Energon that fans really like to remember from time to time. You know, I remember when the Rise of the Beast core series Air Razor came out, the one I reviewed, the one I put in the top 10 of that year. I remember a lot of people going like thinking like, "Ooh, Energon Dive Bomb." Like the fact that the legs became the wings in beast mode made everyone go, "Ooh, Energon Dive Bomb." But it is a really cool toy. It's a really, really cool look. I think that's one of those that people would really like to see again. I would love to see it again because it's a really great figure. Yeah, I think, see, like for me, this one checks all the boxes. Like, it makes sense because it is a bird, so a flock of birds would work. You know, or a group of ninjas in robot mode. It is the smallest of the line, so it was affordable. It was readily available. It's super cool. It's used a lot in the show. That's where I put up to Holy Grail. It might be on the lower end by the time we get there, but I do really, really, really like that figure. This one, not so much. This is Dreadwing from the movie line, and this is representing the drones from, I believe, the comics/video games. And it's not a direct representation. I should point out, all those drone toys from the movie lines are supposed to, like, tongue-in-cheek be the drones from the video games, but only some of them properly represent that. So we're not going to be discussing all of them in this video. I'm sorry, Payload is not going to make an appearance because he's kind of doing his own thing. But Dreadwing is close enough. And I'm going to say a Dreadwing is dreadful. Because it's exclusive to the video games, which were not really good games, that does knock him down a lot. So the character representation is very, very low. I think it's a very poorly designed toy. I'm not a fan of the overall look of him. Yeah, this one just never sat right with me. Never sat right with me. Commercial availability is one thing, but like I've never been a fan of the figure. I've never really been a fan of the figure. Okay, so this one is another weird. So only available in a 4-pack, but it was a 4-pack of troop builders, and it was all over the place, and it was easy to find on clearance at one point. So the G2 warriors. Now, I do give them an extra bit of credit because, well, for starters, they don't have to really look like anything. They just kind of have to look like G-Axis's troops from the G2 comics. In that, they do an okay job. So the fact that they are retooled from Skullgrin, who transforms into a block, I don't really care. But it doesn't make them a great toy. What gives them a little bit of a leg up is the fact that there are multiple heads, so you can actually diversify your troops a little bit. That does raise them up a notch, but I don't think by that far. I think by the fact the toy itself is just not all that great, and you had to buy 4 toys just to get a hold of one. You know, if you wanted to get that troop built, that gets expensive. So I think it has its advantages, but I think the disadvantages weigh it down. The Guardian robot. Okay, whether you are doing the G1, which is an e-hobby exclusive, or you are doing the modern one, which is a $200 Titan, troop building this is absolutely absurd. It is technically one of the original troop builders, because we're talking season 2. We're talking season 2 of G1. If I'm counting correctly, only one troop builder comes before Guardian Robot. But I think I'm gonna give it extra points for the ridiculous fact that it is possible to troop build, because there are modern releases of the design, but I'm not gonna put it up that high. I am going to include it, like middle of the road, and that's mostly based on design, because I do like that toy in those colors. I think it works for like a more generic color scheme for the Omega Supreme body, but I also think it looks good. So I think it works on multiple levels. But yeah, you got to have a bank account to troop build him. The Infernocons. This is from the last night. Okay. So bear with me here. The character is non-existent. They exist only so Optimus Prime can chop them down by the dozens to look cool during the final fight. That is literally the only reasons the Infernocons exist. That said, Infernocus, a name I absolutely hate, was sold in a 5-pack box. They're all Legends class size, so the box itself not terribly expensive, and you get 5 figures immediately. If you buy 2 of them, you've already got a massive horde for any photo shoot you do. Plenty to pose around your Optimus mid-sword swing. The charcoal gray with the orange highlights looks kind of sick. The new torso looks kind of sick. The fact that you could buy 2 of these and swap the limbs so that you have more symmetrical versions, kind of sick. That means there's a lot of play value to having multiples of these. That increases its odds. So character-wise, I can't put it holy grail because it's a non-character. For the look, the presentation, the way it was available, I think it's actually really, really high on the list. I think it actually puts in a lot of work to make it there, too. And when I looked through this list and I kind of thought about that, I'm like, yeah, like if I'm actually troop building toys, if I want an army, that is like a very quick army to get, and it actually looks pretty good and has a lot of play value, especially if you get 2 of them. Didn't even occur to me, but until I put this list together, but it's actually kind of true, isn't it? This makes me kind of regret passing on him when I first saw him. He was a Toys R Us exclusive, so availability knocks him down a little bit, but I still think kind of cool. Kind of cool. Now, Insecticons. Now, this is the G1 and the ones that are derivative of G1, like Cyberverse, etc. There are other Insecticons to discuss, but these are the ones we are going to be touching on first. And yeah, obviously, like, they're top tier. You have 3, technically 6, 7 Insecticons to pick from. Any of the black and purple ones can be troop built, which means you can troop build just Kickback, and that's perfectly fine. Or you can troop build all of them at the same time. Insects makes a perfect troop builder because you would expect to see them in swarms. So that makes it ideal. Why am I putting him above Dive-Bomb? Dive-Bomb's going to end up on the bottom of this list. And you can't argue visuals, because like they have character. They are seen in masses every time Insecticons were in G1. It's just perfect. They are some of the best troop builders every single time. How about Junkons? So Junkons are in this weird area where, like, technically they're not troop builder, but they kind of are at the same time, because Junkons are not supposed to be identical to each other. There's just a lot of variations to how they look. And fortunately, whenever we get a Wreck-Gar, we tend to get a bunch of them at the same time. We tend to get a bunch of retools into the other Junkons. So technically you can troop build them, but I feel like there is limitation because they're not supposed to all look the same. They're all supposed to be a little bit different. So unless you could get like 8 variations out, You can't really make an army of them. And if they actually did do that many variations, it would be ridiculously expensive and take a long time to get a hold of all of them. So I'm actually going to put him, high retail release. I don't think it works. I think it's great that so many come out, but I don't think it necessarily works for troop building. Okay, this is, what is this one? I always get it mixed up. I believe this is the KSI drone, the KSI Sentry. Again, it's a movie villain character that's just meant to be shot down by Autobots. It's, it's a mass-produced Decepticon type. It looks cool enough, but no character, very little screen presence. None of them, they never actually looked cool in combat. I'll put him high bargain bin. He's got a good, like, generic look to him, but also just meh. Okay, here's one to talk about. This is the Noise Maze mass production version. If you've never seen this, Noise Maze had a white, gold, and ice blue repaint in Japan that was seen in an army in Transformers Cybertron, and it's a glorious color. That toy is absolutely beautiful. I love it, and I hate that there's only 500 in the world. So it's a gorgeous toy. It does make appearance in major media, and it is a really, really good toy too. I would love to put it Holy Grail, but I cannot because of the availability issue. Which, that is, because there's only 500, troop building them is nearly impossible. Which would bring me all the way down to retail release. However, we have a ray of hope in the fact that there is a brand new Sideways toy being released. And there is only 2 repaints you could do with that. The Rat Bat from Universe, which is not going to be a big, likely toy to make. Or you're going to do this one. And because this one has really high hopes of being released, I am going to put it to premium. I'm putting it to premium because great toy, great look, great repaint. I'm only, but the other 2 things, the other 2 issues, the possibility of a new one, but the fact that right now it's nearly impossible, balances each other out right in the middle. This is another Insecticon, but this is the Prime Insecticon, represented by Hardshell here, because their designs were relatively the same. Again, for availability and for affordability, this is fine, because the toy itself is very small, it is very readily available. Overall look is fine, it is a good toy. And, and all that works out, especially in the Cyberverse line, because that meant it was affordable to troop build, but you could still have a lot of figures interacting with them that were in scale for the most part, meaning you could have like a proper like army of like big hulking Insecticon types like you had in Transformers Prime. So that all works out. That all works out to a pretty good, that works out to like a pretty good availability. I think that makes for a pretty good score. And the fact that like there is one standout to really push the idea behind the Insecticon in the show, that helps a lot too. So that one gets a higher grade. Well, we're here now. We are here now. So we still have some of the original Vehicons to talk about, but here we are at the Prime Vehicon. And I don't think there's any question it's the best troop builder of all time. Like, you talk readily available, it's a Wave 1 toy. You don't get more available than a Wave 1 toy in a mass-produced toy line. The toy itself is phenomenal. It is leagues above most everything else in its toy line, even later stuff, even the first edition stuff that had a higher budget. It's an absolutely inspired toy. You have the variations that are available, the jet version, the white versions, if you want to have like elite troops in your army. And then the fact, man, the show used them so well. Pour one out for Steve. We miss you, Steve. That's so good. I'm talking about Steve the Vehicon, guys, not Steve Blue. He's around. He ain't going anywhere. Just realized like a second later is like, oh, someone might misinterpret that. But no. The Vehicon is prime. No, I don't even mean that as a pun. It's just like the perfection of of the troop builder, and the fact that you could troop build the deluxes or you can troop build the legends class. I have a podcast co-host who had over 24 at one point. Okay, now on to the original troop builder, Reflector. Now, I love Reflector. I really do. I think he's a huge missed opportunity as a character, and I don't know why they don't do more toys of him, considering he's an 84 Decepticon. However, one disadvantage to him is the fact that you need 3 of them to actually form like his proper alt mode, which means on an individual level they get kind of weak. The Siege ones tried to fix that with a spaceship mode. It's kind of uninspired and not really looking very good, so it's hard to really give it credit for that. It served a purpose, but it didn't serve it very well. So I can't put him terribly high. I'll put him like, I think like end of premium price, because there's also something to be said about like a troop that also transforms together. So depending on the Reflector, I really like it though. I'll give him a little bit of respect for being the OG. Now, we're talking about a Scorponok here. Now, this is the point where I point out that the Kingdom cartoon also used Scorponok as a troop builder, but they used the Beast Wars Scorponok as a troop builder, and that's stupid. That's stupid. We are here to talk about the Rise of the Beast Scorponoks, which appeared at the very end of the movie and existed to get shot by Autobots. So I can't really credit those. The toys, the Scorpion modes are cool. Scorpion modes are cool. Robots, not so much. Transformation, not so much. Yeah, just little screen time and little purpose for existing. So I'm putting him low. I'm putting him bargain bin. I can't even put availability up there because that was in that, that's in that period of like studio series where like the distribution was a mess. Like I didn't see too many on the store shelves. So that also hurts it. Okay, Scrapmetals. Scrapmetals have this fun thing that troop builders need to do more often, which is do the same mold but just color variations. And that makes it easy. Everyone went nuts trying to find the blue one as soon as they found out the red and yellow were the only ones Hasbro were going to do. But that said, they're at the lowest price point for the toy line. They are very readily available because they came out in multiple waves. They are featured fairly heavily as a threat in the cartoon. Maybe not for a terribly long time, but it's the fact that these are just like so frequently seen. It's the fact that they are multicolored. So I can have a troop build, but also I have variety. I can just take one of each and be happy. So I can take that. I want to put them like kind of like right there. Like lower end on the premium price. I think they're really good. And I think they worked really, really well as a troop builder at the time. Here's a weird one you might not even be aware of. The Seacons in America are absolutely not troop builders. They're all individual characters, names, and all that. However, if you're in Japan and you watched Master Force, the Seacons were hordes of Decepticons who routinely got blown up until they created Turtler to act as a leader for them, and then Turtler could combine with 4 as needed to form Piranhacon. Now, this one does not make sense as a troop builder because there really wasn't an inexpensive way to get it. If you're in America, yeah, you could just buy them at normal retail when they were first out. If you're in Japan, you had to buy box sets, which meant you got a whole bunch of Turtlers, and Turtler only had one version in the show. So you're now troop building a character who was not a troop builder. You have the variation, which is cool, but, and they all kind of match because of the color scheme, so that is a cool visual itself. It's just not a practical one to troop build. And frankly, it's a very small amount of the fandom who would even be interested or even know that that was troop buildable. I put them low retail because of the variety. The variety points work. Availability hurts it a lot, though. And logic hurts it a lot. That's a lot of turtles hanging around that don't need to be there. So, it's not Thundercracker. It's not Thundercracker. This is a stand-in for any generic Seeker they have released in any line whatsoever, because there have been so many of them over the years. And this is just a go-to. This is just an easy go-to. You know, a pale blue, a light purple, you know, just like some normal color that a Seeker normally does not get. And we're going to call it a brand new drone. We're going to call it a brand new Seeker. So, it's middle of the road. Like, I'm going to put smack dab in the middle of everything. Middle of retail release, middle of the tiers, because it varies wildly depending on which version of the drones you got. Which Seeker did you buy en masse so you could have a troop, an army of them. There's no easy one to distinguish there. So just smack dab in the middle. Okay, this is Lockdown's crew. This was the Shadow Raiders, and you have a good look for a drone unit with the visor head, but beyond that, you do just kind of come across as guy who is a thing, and I'm hard-pressed to remember these guys. They have so little presence in the movie that it's just completely a miss to me. So I'm going to go... because he looks a little bit better, I'm going to put him above the KSI Sentry, but I think he falls in that same realm of just like, you barely exist and you're kind of dull. So he kind of has to go in there. Sharkticons. I think this is one of those that like people think of like quintessential, right? Because you see entire schools of them anytime they're around. So you have to troop build these at some point. Every time I saw one of these on clearance, I bought it. You know, I've got, you know, across different sizes and molds, I probably got like seven modern ones. More if I include the tiny ones from Cyberverse. I have a lot of those. But for this one, yeah, Sharkticons are pretty high up there. Sharkticons are pretty high up there. You know what helps? You know what really helps the Sharkticon is the fact that there's so many sizes that you excuse me, that you can get them at, because they did them at they did them at like the modern Legends scale, like little ones. They did them at warrior class, you know, for the kids line, and they did them as deluxes. So you have these little variations, but they all kind of have a similar design to them. You know, so so you have the troop, and there's your diversity, is in the size of it all. That actually stands out a lot more to me. I think that is a really cool way of being able to do it. Signal flare. So going back to the no, we're entering the area of the Omnibots. Now I want to point out, I just piled all these pictures in alphabetically. The fact that all three Omnibots are together on this list is entirely coincidental. It just so happens there's no other S-bots that ended up in between them. So let's start off this little block. Signal Flare on his own, I don't think makes for a great one. The toy itself is not great. It's widely available because it wasn't a hot seller. The cool thing about him is being able to put him in vehicle mode and having a whole bunch of like Godzilla-looking maser cannons all at the same time. That kind of works out. I don't think he's that thrilling of a figure or character, though. You know, like if we're talking about thrilling or character, like let's talk about Skyblast. Much cooler look. You know, a little fleet of these is a cool thing to have. The weaponry is way better than what Signal Flare is capable of. You know, everything turning into a spear is kind of cool. You know, that makes for a better like weapon choice than what Signal Flare came to the party with. You know, and it's just a better design. It's just a better design overall. So let's pop them somewhere premium price. Premium like there. Low premium. Yeah, low premium. And that brings us to Strong Arm, who again, Energon weapons, you know, are very easy, you know, very fun for the larger figures to build. Availability's fine. Presence in the show. Him and Skyblast are seen throughout the entire series. So I can't, so hard to argue anything against here outside of maybe his design is a little bit more dull than some of the others. Maybe, like maybe that might be the only thing knocking him down. I'll put him top of retail release. And that might be just a personal preference thing. Like you could easily make a case for him to be up higher. Okay, so here's the contrast. Sweeps. Okay, so like I put some of them in the bargain bin because they're just kind of like a generic guy, but they're turning into like normal cars and things. Sweeps hit this interesting balance in that they have this cool, ominous look in their robot mode, and their vehicle mode really is very basic. Like it is just it's a flying surfboard of a spaceship, but it is generic in a way that just kind of has this like cold edge to it that doesn't exist on the KSI Sentry or the Shadow Raider. They just they feel like they are just like drones existing to kill type vibe. And part of this, I'm sure part of this is just me being biased to the sweeps because I like the sweeps, but I do think they have a really good presence to them. I think that is what the drones down here in the bargain bin are lacking, is presence. And presence get you very high on my list. Sweeps are classic. I gotta put sweeps very high. Now, what do we do with Swindle here? Swindle's representing drones from the video game, and at least he does a pretty good job of that. I tend to like this toy better than a lot of people do. I do think it works really good as a drone unit in a way that, like, okay, so like the KSI Sentry, for instance, just kind of looks like a generic bot, but it doesn't have here's that cold presence that I was talking about with the sweeps. I would even say the same of like the Shadow Raider. If anything, the Shadow Raider's trying a little bit too hard to be edgy, and he's missing the point. Swindle, I think, has like the camera head here gives him that ominous look of just like cold, efficient design to just murder. And then like he works on that level for me. I want to put him like right there because I think the Battle Ravage has a little bit more character to it. A little bit more character, but I like the Swindle. And I like that, that makes for a good drone design. Here's a big discrepancy. So this is the basic class tank drone. And it's, it's a good figure. It's actually a really good figure, and it's a better on-screen representation than the Mega class Tankor. That said, it's way, way too small. I don't care if you are making the drones smaller than the major figures. There is no way that this should have been this small. Now, it's a good toy, and that does mean that at the small basic class, $5 a pop, you are going to be able to troop build it relatively easy. But it's just the fact that it's too frickin' small. I can have a dozen of these, and they don't even reach Cheetor's knee if I stacked them up. So the toy itself being good, the availability good, presence in the show good. Toy itself, it suffers badly. It suffers badly. For the other points, I'll put it high up on the retail end, but it just needed to be bigger. It needed to be so much bigger. All right, Virulent Drone. So the first one that the BotCon team took a crack at, their first troop builder, and obviously they release troop builder sets all the time. They loved easy repaint things. Virulent Clone, it served the story of the year, but like who really cares about some generic blue and yellow bugs? For starters, the mold it's using, the Buzzclaw mold, not all that great. It's one of those molds with clear plastic issues that I hate so much. I'm not really a huge fan on the color scheme. And also, it's kind of a lackluster troop builder because they sold it in sets of 2. In order to get proper troops of them, you had to buy 2 or 3. Like, at least like with a box of, at least with a bag of 3. Like, it feels like I've got a small squad. I've got, all I've got in this bag with a 2-pack is Billy and Jimmy. And I'm looking for Bimmy, and Bimmy's not here. So between that, lackluster mold availability, it was a OTF was it was like it was early, it was an early BotCon exclusive, so availability well not there either. Availability was never there. I am putting it flea market level. It is not a good troop builder. It is in fact a bad troop builder. Here's another interesting one though: the Walrooters. Again, BotCon released, and again, weird repaints. However, all of them have some kind of referential thing to them. They are based in, like, here's the Skywarp colors, here's the Bug Bite colors on Waspinator, and there's like the Buzzsaw colors slash, Shattered Glass. So they all have referential stuff that does make them better. Now, they are tricky because of the availability of being BotCon. However, these are among the fire sale ones, so for a hot minute, you could actually get these for like near retail price. And if you manage to get the 4-pack at that price, it was a glorious set of toys. And keep in mind, they also come with that little weaponizer Waspinator. So again, you have the 2-size thing, and then you have the multicolor thing. So you have all these matched troops, and they are the Walrooters together, but lots of diversity, lots of visual difference, lots of playability with the weaponizer parts. Like, it's actually really good. It's actually really, really good. I'm putting it very high on this list. I'm putting it very high on this list. I am so tempted to put Infernocons to Holy Grail level because there's so few in there. But no, I can't. I can't because the character was used so little. He doesn't barely exist character-wise. But no. Walrooters were surprisingly cool. Surprisingly cool. So I gotta give it to that. I believe that's gonna do it. Let me shrink this down so you can see like where everyone ended up. So that's the tier list. Obviously, there are troop builders that I missed, both release and toys, and of course, fictional ones we don't count because you can't troop build ones that don't have toys. But this just gives you my general opinion. Remember, it's off the cuff, it's spur of the moment. Maybe I got a few things wrong. You're more than welcome to tell me in the comments below. But that's what I got for you today. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.
Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday / early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.